And welcome in, everyone. Hello again. We're another week in to the Dynasty Force podcast to the NFL season. We got it all going on. We're here to break as much of it as we possibly can down here. I mean, so much to cover. Let's just get into it. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyForceFB. Different stats, rankings, thoughts, articles. Today, I posted an article on Twitter, matchup breakdown for each matchup in week 2. You can find it in my pinned tweets on Twitter. You can find it, you can find the article in that tweet. You can find as a thread to that tweet a quick breakdown. And then anything else, obviously, you can feel free to at me, DM me, do whatever you need, get the information you may want from me. And then we got my guy, Billy, over here.
What up?
Back again. Bill, how'd your weekend go with DFS, with everything else? And, just how'd you enjoy football? Football being back.
It just felt normal to have football on the TV again. UFC went pretty well, but betting-wise for NFL didn't go too well. But overall, DFS-wise, it went as expected. Kind of a weird injury news that we got late Saturday night with Miles Sanders being hurt. So I locked in a lot of Boston Scott, which ended up ultimately fucking up my lineups a little bit. And then we'll talk about one of the biggest surprises in the week once we get to that article.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
And then there was one that fucked my lineup up last week, but it's all good. We cashed.
Of course. And then you can follow Billy on Twitter at GettingBills. He posts parlays that he's playing. He posts DFS lineups and other things of that nature. And then we welcome in our guest today, Laquan Jones at Real Deal Fantasy on Twitter.
Yeah.
Laquan, I'm going to call you LQ as you have requested. How are you doing today?
Feeling good.
Yeah, how was this past weekend for you?
This weekend was crazy. I came out with a lot of dubs and had one loss in my home league, which matters the most to me. But, I got burned by a couple of guys, and we're actually going to cover a couple of guys that burned me today. So can't wait to vent and dig into that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, we all got burned by basically, someone burned probably there was at least one player started in each lineup that at least burned one person, if that makes sense.
Yep.
It's week 1, even though it's a crazy season, it's week 1 like normal hitting again. And I mean, what better way to start off a crazy season? We have, sadly, so much injury news to get into. So before we get into that, though, we're going to talk a little icebreaker here. What surprised you most in week 1? I'll lead off real quick here. I think what surprised me most, which is kind of crazy, but it's, as Bill will sadly kind of, cry over there. Washington's defensive line, I knew they were going to be good, but I just feel like watching them, I know they went up against a bad offensive line in Philadelphia that had dealt with a lot of injuries. And, it's not the best situation to kind of grade people out, but watching Chase Young, watching the other guys play on that defensive line, Montez Sweat, Darren Payne, Jonathan Allen, Ryan Kerrigan coming in on certain snaps, they just looked like a really well-rounded unit. And it's a lot like what carried San Francisco last season to a Super Bowl appearance, I should say, even though, obviously. But anyway, obviously this Washington team is not going to the Super Bowl because San Francisco could actually do things on offense, and I don't trust that Washington is going to be very effective on offense this season. But it's surprising to me because I feel as though the defense in Washington could carry them to a record that would be surprising compared to Washington football teams of the past. Billy, I want you to publicly talk about how disappointed you were in the Philadelphia Eagles this week as a Philly fan. Because I'd like to see your shame.
I'm not like the regular type of Eagle fans because I try to keep my bias out of things because how much things I would like play throughout like daily fantasy and like fantasy leagues and stuff like that. But I was really disappointed in Boston Scott because I felt like that Boston Scott was really used a lot in the passing game last year, even with Miles Sanders there, and he's like second best receiver on our team potentially. And it was just like a little bit weird how things kind of went. I know our offensive line we had 3 missing offensive linemen starters. So I knew what type of game we're in store for, an ugly type of football game. But some of the things that the Redskins did honestly surprised me. Like, for example, who's the dude?
Logan Thomas?
No, not Logan Thomas. Trying to think of the running back that
Gibson or McKissick or Barber?
Peyton Barber.
Yeah, they said they listed McKissick as the starter, but McKissick, if you were watching that game, McKissick was not used at all in that game.
Yeah, he had some touches, but it was just nothing, and he did nothing with the touches he got.
Yeah, I think better days are to come for that offense in general. I feel like because they're going to be put in a lot of garbage time situations, and I feel like if there's an Antonio Gibson owner out there that started off 0-1 this week, I would definitely float him in a little trade offer, see where his head's at on that type of player.
Yeah, that's Gibson is a low end kind of guy where like you could buy him cheap, but you could definitely, it could pay dividends. Detroit Beastie commenting here, live 24/7, 365. You know us, Chris Robin. Thanks for commenting. He's saying, "Where's Billy today? An Italian villa?" Bill, tell me about your location. It seems you're traveling around the world anymore.
Hey man, this is just a nice little location that we got going on right here. As you can see, nice little living room vibe, just getting comfortable, locked in for the evening. Tonight's the type of night that I like to do my UFC tape, so yeah. I'm just trying to catch the vibes.
I feel that. Really quick, for those of you who were listening / tuning in last week, Billy and I had a little bet, which is complete BS that I lost. But
not at all, man. Not at all.
Jamison Crowder versus Stephon Diggs in fantasy points. And Billy and I play in PPR leagues. So obviously Stephon Diggs Jamison Crowder outscored Stephon Diggs this past week on the heels of one lucky 60-yard screen pass for a touchdown.
But that I don't think that was the point, because if you rewind the tape from last week, it was because you had Stephon Diggs as your starter of the week, and Stephon Diggs had 8 receptions, 9 targets, and the purpose of the bet was to say that Crowder is just like a sleeper version of
definitely
that type of player, and he had 7 receptions for 13 targets. He just had the touchdown. So I feel like even if you do take away the long touchdown, overall that was the purpose of the bet, because I took the 3 points too as well, because if you do the ADP calculations, most would say that wasn't a fair bet, but the underdog won in that one.
For sure.
To pay him back, I owe him a shot of this vodka mixed into this Coke that I'm going to chug. While I'm doing this, because obviously the host can't chug alcohol and talk. LQ, how about you tell me about what surprised you most in week 1 here?
Man, there was a lot, honestly, but I gotta say what surprised me the most was Atlanta's game.
Oh my God, please. I'm an Atlanta fan. I don't want to hear about this, because I texted my friends during the game, and I was like, tell me how year after year I'm just disappointed week one. Like, it doesn't even, like, I just know there's nothing to look forward to for the entire season, and it's been every year for the past, 3-4 years now, and I can't do anything but cry about it. But continue, please.
But it's just crazy how they had 3 wide receivers with 12 targets, all of them over 100 yards. Each of them, I think, shared the touchdown. Actually, no, Julio didn't score because Julio doesn't like touchdowns. But anyway, it was just crazy to see Russell Gage get so involved in the offense where he's actually like one of the guys that were like picking up on the waivers and not necessarily starting him in your starting lineup. I will pump the brakes on that. But it was definitely kind of interesting to see that there's a third guy, that's not a tight end, who's a wide receiver, to be like very involved in that offense. And hopefully, I'm not going to overlook that he was able to, put up big fantasy points. That's definitely something I'm going to keep my eye on for the rest of the season.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just getting over some quick death right there. But
you got the Romanus?
Just to prove what I went through here. If you're watching, you can see. Billy, congrats on the win, but I will get you very shortly here. To talk about Atlanta and their wide receiver core. By the way, Calvin Ridley, I think he was the wide receiver 2 on the week.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great week, and only wide receiver 2 because of Devontae Adams and how good he was. My point as far as Atlanta's wide receivers and why I kind of think they won't be so... I think Julio and Calvin Ridley will be that heavily involved every week. Russell Gage, though, you saw Hayden Hurst run the most routes of any tight end in football this past week. And
good call, Rob.
I think he ended the game with 3 receptions. So very underwhelming week for Hayden Hurst. And he definitely could improve upon that. So I'm not very high on Russell Gage. Obviously, like if his volume stays at where it's at, at least for this week, he's definitely someone that should be added everywhere. But I'm just leaning on the side that it won't stay that way. Maybe it was like a kind of way to attack the defense, like maybe Jamal Adams was covering Hayden Hurst a lot or something of that nature. Billy.
Yes.
Your biggest surprise in week 1? I know there's a lot to choose from because week 1
is a lot to choose from.
It was just really, yeah. It's hard to choose just one, honestly.
My biggest surprise week 1, I would say, would be the New England offense. A lot of weird shit that I didn't expect from them this past weekend. The fact that Cam Newton's probably going to be the leading rusher for the team. And then the fact that Julian Edelman, he wasn't really on the field a lot, but when he was on the field, it was in the 3 wide receiver sets and he was highly targeted. So I don't know how you feel about Julian Edelman, but I know a lot of people got him as a late round value. But long term, I don't really like that spot for Julian Edelman because I just want to know my players are on the field because if you're on the field, you just have a better chance of scoring fantasy points. It's kind of common sense. But sometimes we kind of fall into these enigmas in fantasy football sometimes, and it ends up burning us in the long run. So if you have Julian Edelman, he had a good week 1. I'd get the fuck out of there as soon as possible if you have him as a fringe late round guy or something like that.
While I agree completely as far as like his usage and that it was kind of concerning, I would say that when you compare the wide receivers around Julian Edelman to Julian Edelman, it's kind of, apples and oranges, like it's not even close. Like Julian Edelman is an established wide receiver who has had great seasons in the past. He's, did he win the Super Bowl MVP that year? I think he did. So former Super Bowl MVP. Yeah, I mean, like, the next best is N'Keal Harry, and what did N'Keal Harry do this past week? He almost caught a touchdown, but instead he fumbled. It's like
Yeah.
N'Keal Harry is kind of here and there. So I mean, like, I know Edelman's not going to be on the field a ton. You would hope for kind of like comeback situations for Edelman to be on the field a lot, but I do really think the Patriots are going to be in that situation because I don't. And then my point would be that when Edelman is on the field, he'll be targeted, and I have pretty strong faith in that because he's just the best wide receiver out there on the field, and the way that they're playing him will not only keep him healthy, but it'll also kind of, keep coverage off of him. Hopefully.
See, but I would float like a trade offer and get rid of like Julian Edelman, for example, like a waiver wire hot commodity right now. This week was like Naheem Hines. I would do that in a heartbeat.
Oh
dude.
yeah. I would. I mean, if you could get Hines, yeah. Definitely.
But I'm saying like that's the type of trades that you would float out there when you have somebody that kind of overseeded expectations in week one. That was my point, basically.
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel that. LQ, do you feel that same way?
Yeah, there's definitely those guys that are overreacting. So I would definitely just put them on the trade block and see who bites.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And like you said earlier, man, he's a big name. So you can kind of float him around, like, for example, like Deontay Johnson for Julian Edelman would be a fucking steal. And those are just two different name brand values, I just feel like.
Yeah. Highway robbery.
Yeah, and it's funny because I feel like if you have Julian Edelman, like, you would float that trade out there and everyone would kind of jump on Julian Edelman, where, like, not knowing that Deontay Johnson played, like, almost all of the snaps, and he was heavily targeted in week one. Even though it wasn't a great game, you trust the usage more than you trust, what actually happened as far as production. All right, let's just head into the news and the notes. There's a lot to cover. It was sadly a very injury-plagued week one. We'll start with Marlon Mack rupturing his Achilles. He's out for the season. I feel so badly for Marlon Mack because
it's the last time we'll see him in a Colts uniform, right?
Yes, it is. He was on a contract year, so he's out of there.
He's gone, and I mean, he was looking good in this game. He was looking like he was going to at least hold Jonathan Taylor off for a little while for the lead role. And for this to happen in a contract year, it's not a bright outlook for his future. LQ, obviously Jonathan Taylor gets a huge bump for this. Where would you kind of rank him rest of season?
Rest of season, I mean, they have a great old line. I mean, the offense looked great, and Naeem Hines was, being the, Austin Eckler 2.0 Walmart version. But I definitely do like, the whole offense as a whole. And like you said, Marlon Mack was looking good. He was going to fend off, Jonathan Taylor. And I kind of think with you drafting Jonathan Taylor, you kind of had the expectations that, Marlon Mack was going to be there for, 4 to 5 weeks until he got hurt. But, he just got hurt earlier than we expected, so we already knew it was JT time to begin with when they drafted him. Yeah. So you're not going to have a guy like JT sitting behind Marlon Mack on a contract year trying to prove himself, and then stuff like this happens. So for me, I kind of ranked him exactly where I ranked him in an offseason. He was a top 15 back. He can easily go right now. It's a full send for him to be a top 10 back right now.
Oh, yeah, definitely. To me, Jonathan Taylor was a guy who I saw having a Miles Sanders type of impact, where Sanders was pretty ineffective when Jordan Howard was healthy, but then when Sanders kind of got the backfield to himself at the end of last season, he became a top 6 fantasy back for the rest of the season. And that's kind of how I saw it for Jonathan Taylor. I thought he had that upside with the offensive line. And another thing we saw in this game that I don't think we expected, 6 targets for Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, Phillip Rivers is true to his name, and he will throw to whatever running back is in the formation. Billy, what are your kind of expectations for Jonathan Taylor rest of season?
I think this boosts him up right into top like 12 to 14 back. So I would say low end RB1 at this point because that's the thing that we talked about right after the draft. I felt like everybody was saying, man, if Jonathan Taylor can get this backfield full workload and stuff like that, sky's the limit for him. And it just happened a little bit sooner rather than later. Kind of similar to the Clyde Edwards-Helaire situation. Both of these rookies are stepping into a big role, I feel like, for the rest of the season. Like Jonathan Taylor's probably going to be locked into like all my DFS lineups this week because of the mispricing on FanDuel and DraftKings.
I saw a tweet earlier, okay, what do I do now? And, they just put Jonathan Taylor in at 5,700. That's a steal.
Yeah.
I saw another tweet earlier that someone sent. I don't think it was Dynasty. I think it was Redraft, but it was a trade of Jonathan Taylor for Nick Chubb, straight up. Which side would you guys prefer in that trade?
Dynasty, right?
No, Redraft.
Redraft?
Yeah.
Oof. I mean, I'd probably go JT.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing because regardless of the Chubb situation, man, Hunt was on the field a lot more than we all kind of expected.
Yeah, Hunt out-touched him 17-11, so it's pretty crazy. I also would take Jonathan Taylor. I think they're both very talented, but I think JT behind that line, I would definitely take Taylor in that situation personally.
Yeah, I just hope we're not overreacting to week 1.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll see tomorrow night as the Browns take on the Bengals, and the Bengals are going to be without Geno Atkins, I believe, at defensive tackle. So, if anyone should thrive in that matchup, it's going to be Nick Chubb.
Hopefully.
Yeah, one would hope, especially after that week 1. Moving on here, Michael Thomas sidelined several weeks with a high ankle sprain. This came out initially after the news of his injury. I think it was pretty quickly after the game that we heard about it. Then it was said that he was going to play through it, and it just came out that it was worse than expected. Now we expect him to miss several weeks. And this is the kind of injury that concerns people because last year, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Christian Kirk, 3 guys that had this injury came back and took a while to get back to game shape and produce like they were producing before when they were healthy. So this is a kind of, to me, Billy, you tagged me in this tweet on Twitter, and I replied to you saying this was a lot like Devontae Adams of last year, where Devontae Adams, if you remember, first 3 weeks were kind of Then he had a great week 4, but in that week he got turf toe, and then he missed the next 4 weeks. So you're kind of half the season without an elite wide receiver. And I only had one Devontae Adams share last year, and I didn't make the playoffs because I held on to Devontae Adams because he was great, and I just knew he was going to be great when he came back, and he was, but that didn't help me over the first 8 weeks, essentially. So I feel like this is going to be a similar situation where Michael Thomas is really obviously, like, you can hold him as long as you can, and if you can somehow win without him, then, kudos to you. But I feel like it's going to be a while before we see prime Michael Thomas back out there on the field. Billy, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely do agree with that. It's unfortunate because a lot of people that kind of went, I wouldn't say zero wide receiver, but went wide receiver running back. There's definitely a lot of people that drafted Michael Thomas and are going to get flamed by him by the end of the year. I'm just glad I drafted. I'm just glad I got my Devontae Adams shares while they were low.
Yeah, speaking of the number 1 overall wide receiver of week 1, LQ, do you want to talk about it and your pain as you are a Michael Thomas owner?
I mean, there's really no excuse for his performance because the injury happened in the fourth quarter. There was like 5 minutes left. So he had about 3.7 points or something like that at that time. So it's kind of like what happened all 3 quarters. You weren't producing, like you weren't being, heavily targeted. And
he was healthy.
Yeah. So it's like I don't understand how you get hurt when you're like blocking for a run pass. Like your awareness level was like 0 because you weren't. So it's like that's on him, man. He really ruined a lot of teams, and as an owner who has shares of him in like 2 or 3 leagues, it's like really disappointing. It's kind of like you said, it's going to take.
It puts you in a terrible spot.
Yeah, early in the season, but you gotta be able to navigate, make some moves, waiver wire, in season management. It's what it's about, really. So
definitely,
you can't lose any sleep over it.
Right, and we're not really covering waiver wire on the show, but I mean, like, obviously there's big time ads for this week, and so many outlets out there have got you covered with the waiver wire ads. Real quick, no explanation. Your top waiver wire ad at wide receiver, because there's a ton of them. LQ, you go first.
I'm tied between 2, and I literally hate Corey Davis, but I picked up Corey Davis. And Robbie Anderson.
I would prefer Robbie of the 2. Billy?
I got both, so I'm good.
Billy?
Give me a second. I'm pulling up my...
No problem.
Anthony Miller, if he's owned in leagues. I'll just give you my top 5.
Okay.
1 was Anthony Miller, 2 was Russell Gage, 3 was the Green Bay wide receivers, 4 was Laviska Shenault, and 5 was Sammy Watkins.
Ooh, I do like the Laviska Shenault shout out. I'll go with the old trusty Paris Campbell on the field.
Paris Campbell
used a lot and exclusive as in the slot. And 6 catches and has that speed to turn upfield. So those are some quick guys.
I'm thinking about playing him in my cash games. I was going to ask you about that. Maybe. I'll save that for after the show.
They got Minnesota this week, who got really torched by Aaron Rodgers last week.
Corners are fucking terrible. I don't know why I bet on them last week.
All right, so those are just some quick options for, anything to replace Michael Thomas, and a few of them might even still be out on waivers now. So go check that out. Moving on here, Chris Godwin, another wide receiver in the NFL's concussion protocol. I doubt he plays this week based on how late he got into it. I am going against a guy who owns Chris Godwin in a redraft league this week. And I immediately decided to go out and pick up Scotty Miller and play him this week against him in order to kind of, hurt him in his deepest, tap into the mind games here. I'm going to beat you with the guy you would have hoped to replace Chris Godwin with. But yeah, I feel like Scotty Miller will actually be in a good position to produce this week. They're going against Carolina. And we saw the Raiders put up 34 on the Panthers this week. Obviously, a lot of that was Josh Jacobs. But I think Tom Brady, after a disappointing week 1, will want to take advantage. Even if he doesn't have Chris Godwin, Mike Evans will still be the number 1 truly. But Scotty Miller received a decent amount of opportunity last week. He had 5 receptions, I know. So I'll head over to Billy for this one. Without Chris Godwin, I mean, is there anyone you're looking at in more particularity? I'm
kind of looking a little bit into the tight end situation over there because, as you know, I wasn't too high on Gronk, but I wasn't against picking Gronk this year. But it looks like OJ Howard is sneakily going to be a trendy back end type tight end 1 weekly, and I don't think fantasy owners are up to quit the par with that yet.
Yeah, he actually outperformed Gronk last week. He did catch the touchdown, which was a little more surprising. Though I went back and looked.
He was on the field more than him and got a lot more
He was.
routes ran.
Yeah. LQ, your thoughts on kind of just sort of everything with the Chris Godwin injury?
I mean, he's probably not going to play. So, like you said, I think Miller would be the nice plug and play. But like Billy said, I was looking at the tight ends, and OJ Howard was like very involved, more involved than Gronk. But to be honest, Gronk picked the worst year to come back to football with COVID and preseason, limited practices. He's not really in shape, and we can't forget, it does not like time stops and he doesn't get older. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
he wasn't in football shape going into this season, so I didn't really expect any, high ceilings for him. I just, pegged him to be very touchdown dependent, week to week. So he was never going to be like a start and forget for me. But OJ Howard, surprisingly, like he's starting to make me feel like, maybe I'll give him a chance. But I'm still like a Cameron Brate guy. Hopefully he can, step up.
Cameron Brate. Speaking of Cameron Brate, Fantasy Football Forecast account. This is Trey Tyndall at FF Superflex Guru commenting.
What up, Trey?
Gronk, OJ Howard, and Brate were all out there a ton this week. Kind of annoying. But I definitely understand what he means by kind of annoying because, the tight end position is so bad as it is. It's not like, putting them all out there, you can't trust just one, in my opinion. And he's saying that too. And because of it, it would be nice if they really kind of committed to one guy, because then we could trust just one. And then at that point, we have an extra guy to be able to play in a very thin field. So I definitely understand that, Trey. I think we hit most of the points with Chris Godwin. Let's move on here to Kenny Golladay, who's still not practicing this week. Yeah, the nail on the head there. I thought them holding Kenny Golladay out this week was last week was kind of precautionary to say like, hey, it's week 1. Let's not risk him for the rest of the season by getting antsy and playing in week 1, like how Miami played Devontae Parker and he had a setback. So things like that. LQ, what are your thoughts on Golladay? I mean, hopefully things can look better this week, but it's not looking good early.
No, it's not looking good. If he's not practicing today, it's kind of like something else is going on. It's more serious than they thought. I feel like they're past the, being cautious about it. This is like actually an injury, like that's probably going to linger, until Sunday we find out. I mean, Saturday night really, but I feel like this more effectively it just hurts Marvin Jones because now he's seeing, the number 1 corners of these teams. And I think there's really no timetable on Golladay getting better. So, before Marvin Jones is like my safety guy that I can start and forget in my flex position because I know he's going to see like number 2 corners and he'll do his thing. He'll be out there eating. But like we saw week 1, it wasn't like that exactly of him exploding as much as we wanted him to, be that guy. Because I could have sat Marvin Jones for what he put up. He put up like 9 points, right?
Yeah, something like that. He's a good player, but he's not a number 1 receiver.
He's a role player.
Yeah, and I was hoping Golladay would play this week. I was expecting a really high-scoring matchup here between the Packers and the Lions because they're 2 teams that, the Packers have a much better defense than the Lions, but it's still kind of around a little above average. So I felt like the Lions would be able to put up points on this defense, and that the Packers would, I just thought this would kind of be a shootout. But if Kenny Golladay is not playing, I feel less confident in that. Billy, who would be the biggest benefactor if Golladay were to miss again or to miss for an extended period of time?
TJ Hawkinson. He was a top 3 tight end last week. in DFS last week in GPPs, I kind of locked in Marvin Jones, kind of burned me, but I had TJ Hawkinson, and TJ Hawkinson was one of the nice surprises plays for me in my GPP lineups because I wouldn't say over exceeded expectations, but he was just needed for that team.
Yeah, they need another pass catcher.
A big play pass catcher, and I think TJ Hawkinson has a lot of touchdown upside. One stat that I wanted to bring up was, I think it was like the Lions against the Packers have like over exceeded the Vegas total in like 6 straight games. So I really do like TJ Hawkinson a lot this week.
Yeah. It's great that you brought up Hawkinson because I had Quintez Cephas on my mind as a guy who saw a ton of opportunity last week. I believe he saw 10 targets. And he did decent with them. I mean, he didn't really hit the way that, you would hope, like either Marvin Jones normally hits or anything. But I mean, he was a rookie in his first career game. And, if you're in a really deep league and you're looking for a start and Galladay's out, maybe you could play Quintez Cephas in this game and, he'll at least receive volume. But I love that you brought up Hawkinson because he's a guy where like waiver wires are out there and people were targeting guys probably like Noah Fant or Jonnu Smith or other guys, maybe not necessarily, Dallas Goedert, maybe not necessarily TJ Hawkinson, but he's definitely a name to bring up, especially if Galladay is potentially out again this week. Next one, this was kind of resolved today. I don't necessarily buy that it was, but tension is rising between the Bears and Allen Robinson. Essentially, the Bears just don't seem like they want to pay Allen Robinson wide receiver 1 money, and obviously Allen Robinson deserves it. He's on the last year of his deal. Apparently, the other day he went to them and said, "What are the odds that you actually just trade me?" Which I guess very little, because now today news came out that he and Matt Nagy had a great conversation. They're going to continue on. Billy, obviously we hope that Allen Robinson just leaves Chicago, goes somewhere where he has a great quarterback. Until then, do you think there is any chance that the Bears would trade him? Obviously, it's not going to come this week with the fact that they're 1-0. But like in the future, maybe around the trade deadline, do you think it's possible, considering that they likely won't re-sign him if they continue to offer him too little, and he deserves more from what the team is giving him?
I think it's possible, but it's just like, remember the Raheem Mostert situation over summer when he said he wanted to leave San Francisco? I feel like it's kind of like similar. I just don't think there's going to be a reasonable trade destination for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm seeing Twitter saying like, "Oh yeah, let the Packers get Allen Robinson, this, that, and the third," and it's just like, I don't think that's going to happen.
Chicago would never trade him to.
That's what I'm saying, to a divisional type of team like that.
Right.
But I just don't know where the trade destination spot is going to be for Allen Robinson. But we'll find out this weekend, though, because they're playing the Giants, and that's like literally perfect spot.
That is a cake matchup. LQ, I don't think you saw it. I don't know that you were involved in this, but and I didn't tweet it out there directly. But imagine that Allen Robinson were to get traded to Baltimore. What? Oof. Oh, that
would kill my Marquise Brown shirt.
I'm about to say Hollywood Brown would be dusted, but I feel like it's coach talk right now with him and Matt Nagy having the conversation. It just settled things down, settled the media down, settled, the other teams down to make sure, they're not making calls for him. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did trade him. If he's asking for market value right now, which is not saying he didn't earn it. I think he should get paid, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I feel like the Bears are like, I don't know what's going on there, but they might actually pay Trubisky if he keeps, winning the game.
Don't put that evil on Bears.
Yeah,
fans.
don't get fooled too much. I told Rob last week how good Mitchell Trubisky usually plays the Lions, and his career best games are against the Lions. So.
Listen, if he wins 3 games, let's say they go 3-0, they're paying Trubisky, regardless. If they lose the next 6 games after, they're gonna pay.
Nah, they have playoff aspirations. I feel like if they don't make the playoffs, they're not signing Trubisky.
Look, here's how I'm gonna side.
Have him sit. That makes no sense.
Here's how I'm gonna side. No, they should not pay Trubisky because he's obviously ass. That said, the Bears are a very badly run organization. We've seen that.
Yes.
Many, many times now throughout the past 2 years. And
Watson.
it would not surprise me at all if they decided to pay Trubisky. And at that point, I would feel so badly for every single Bears fan out in the world who I'm imagining at that very moment would stop being Bears fans. Because at that moment I would be too. Let's move on here. Hope the best for Allen Robinson. I think he can produce even with Trubisky, but hopefully he finds a great quarterback in the future. Philip Lindsay, we could hit this one pretty quickly. He was playing more of a backup role to Melvin Gordon as it was, but he's likely out a few weeks with turf toe. Melvin Gordon's going to enter a volume situation where he is going to receive I think he's going to get probably 75% of that backfield work. But this week against Pittsburgh, he's not a play. He's not in consideration at all. You saw the way that they shut down Saquon Barkley, who's one of the top 3 talents at running back last week. So you said
he had no rushing attempts, basically. They were all receptions.
Yeah, he 15 carries for 6 yards. And they were in the backfield basically every single time he got the ball. Mm-hmm. It's a really bad situation. So at least for this week, I wouldn't be looking at Gordon, but we'll see how long Lindsay is out. Last year Devontae Adams missed 4 weeks with turf toe, so that would leave 3 more weeks of kind of upside for Melvin Gordon. So something to monitor real quick. Moving on here, Parker has a chance to play in week 2 after aggravating his hamstring injury. I don't buy this, but I mean, maybe you guys do. LQ?
No, I'm not buying it. I'm definitely sitting him. I have him in a couple of my leagues, and I feel like hamstring injuries, they linger, man. So like when you re-aggravate it, it's just going to be re-aggravated again once you try to full send it. So I feel like he's going to be sitting out for a while.
If you remember, not last year, the year before, Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, very early, both got hamstring injuries, were out for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Came back, and then they both re-aggravated their injuries, and then they had to miss 6 or 7 weeks together. Like each one had to miss that amount because it's just hard to come back from it after aggravating it because it's just a very good chance of aggravating it again. You can feel good, but then you step out on the field and you start to play, and then it just happens again. Billy, if you have Devontae Parker and he is active in week 2, would you consider playing him at all? They play Buffalo so it's really not even a good matchup.
I would try to avoid it if possible, but I was actually kind of looking into Devontae Parker because in one of my Dynasty leagues, we have to start 4 flexes, not including a super flex. So, for example, last week I started Duke Johnson, and this week I'm looking to start Rashad Perryman, and I was thinking about trading for Devontae Parker. So it's pretty interesting that we brought this one up. But I think I'm probably going to stay off of it a little bit because of the injury concerns.
Yeah, and they are real. And Fitzpatrick really didn't look good last week. So who knows if he really even has enough in the position he was in last year, honestly. Real quick, moving on here, Miles Sanders, Lane Johnson, both expected to play in week 2. I think this is like best case scenario for Philly, what they really needed. Just some juice. I haven't heard much about Boston Scott and his injury. Billy, I don't know if you've looked into that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be playing this week, but I expect Miles Sanders to be in there. But I picked up in one of my deep dynasty leagues Michael Warren. He's a name that kind of got a couple snaps last week that Eagles fans should be keeping an eye out for. And also Corey Clement, South Jersey's finest. Corey Clement is also a name that people should add for deep dynasty leagues and stuff like that because you might get a spot start out of them.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on here, Mohamed Sanu signed with the 49ers after Deebo Samuel suffered a setback in his injury. Deebo is now on IR. Sanu, member of the 49ers, former wide receiver for Kyle Shanahan. LQ, any interest at all other than deep dynasty leagues?
None at all. I'm really good off of Sanu. He was cut from New England for a reason. And if you can't outplay N'Keal Harry, who's always hurt, I'm not saying he's a terrible wide receiver, but an old man Edelman, I think it's kind of over for Sanu hype.
Yeah. If they gave up a second-round pick and then cut him, it's we'll have to see. But I mean, if he what if he splashes this week? They play New York, the Jets. What if he splashes this week? Does that make you reconsider?
No.
Well said. All right, and then the final piece of news: Le'Veon Bell placed on IR with a hamstring injury. God, freaking Adam Gase, dude. Like, he freaking came out and said, like, oh yeah, I shouldn't have put him back in after he got hurt the first time. The first time, like, he got hurt, and then he was like, yeah, I'm hurt, and he was like, all right, get back in there. Like, it's a hamstring, and you're really gonna do I don't.
Frustrating.
Yes, it's very frustrating. I don't even own Le'Veon Bell. I could give a shit about this injury news because I was off of him all season because I was actually worried about Frank Gore and how he would be involved, and then I knew the Jets weren't going to be a good offense in the first place. But now, like he's just an asshole, honestly, and that's how I feel. Billy, any interest at all in Frank Gore? I mean, Josh Adams got a rushing touchdown last week.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a scenario that you can build for Josh Adams. What's LaMichael Piron's brother's name that got drafted to the Jets? He was from Florida. What was that kid's name? His last name is Piron. His brother played for the Redskins a couple years ago.
That's a good question.
He was drafted. I gotta pull that up real quick, but he was drafted for the Jets in the 5th round or like deeper in the draft, and I definitely can see. I would pick up all the backups because I just feel like Frank Gore is just dumb, and it makes no sense for them like to play the older guy over the younger guys. My fault. I'm stuttering. I'm trying to find the Jets. Here we go.
Father
I'm trying to find the kids.
Two touchdowns.
I know, right? That's his name actually. It is LaMichael Piron. LaMichael Piron is a name to add in your leagues because I think that he is the best backup behind Le'Veon Bell.
Is he healthy? Because I know he got hurt in the preseason. I can't remember hearing about him getting healthy again. I don't know what his injury was exactly. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I do know he got hurt. And I do know that the Jets also added Kalen Ballage.
Yeah, Kalen Ballage.
Kalen garbage. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, ultimately, it's still an Adam Gates team, so I'm not touching
yes,
anybody in that uniform.
yes, yes. That's
Ever.
a very good point. Over the last 3 seasons, Adam Gase offenses have ranked 30th, 31st, and 32nd. So,
Sheesh.
so I think that says enough.
Still getting head coaching jobs.
Right?
Great. No idea why. Let's move on here. We got some quick, hopefully quick starts that we can get into. Laquan LQ brought with him some busts for this week. So let's get into some of them for this week, and then Billy and I will end it with our survivor picks as we did last week. I'll have Laquan start off here with a nice tight end to play here in week 2.
To play in week 2, Jared Cook, number 1. Got to. That's a full send. For the simple fact, he out-targeted the wide receiver core. Even with the healthy Michael Thomas, he saw 7 targets. Go ahead and put Jared Cook in your offense. I mean, in your lineup. My bad. It shouldn't be a no-brainer here. Jared Cook has been quietly like a top 7, tight end in these back-to-back years with the Raiders, with the Saints, and he's killing the middle of the field, big body. Even when he was a Ram, he was our leading receiver. So it says it all. Jared Cook he could ball out.
Yeah, the usage of Jared Cook really surprised me last week because last year he was very touchdown dependent, didn't receive a lot of volume through the air, and it just seems like it changed all of a sudden. So, Jared Cook is one of the guys that I would be very interested in playing this week with Michael Thomas's injuries. Another guy that I'm very interested in playing is Emmanuel Sanders, the counterpart wide receiver. Look, Billy. So I don't want to tell the story too often, but basically I invested heavily into Emmanuel Sanders this off season. Maybe a little too heavily. No, not luck. Because he caught a touchdown when Michael Thomas was still in there. Anywho, Emmanuel Sanders. I was really expecting a big season for him. I really think that he will be able to step up as well and be kind of the system wide receiver 1 for this offense. Sean Payton is a smart coach. He knows how to scheme guys open. And I think he'll be able to scheme Emmanuel Sanders open a lot, especially this week against the Las Vegas Raiders, who just had 30 points put up on them by the Carolina Panthers. And the Saints are a better offense overall, even without Michael Thomas. I have a lot of faith in Emmanuel Sanders this week. I think Jared Cook is also a great play. Obviously, you're playing Alvin Kamara. So I'm just trying to help instill that faith in the offense. Billy, let's move on here. You have a very surprising running back that you would like to talk about, I see.
Yes, sirree. The running back that I want to talk about is David Johnson of the Houston Texans. I think fantasy owners are going to be paid off very well this year drafting David Johnson. When you look at this matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, you at first want to bench David Johnson, but digging a little bit deeper into the stats a little bit, Duke Johnson, I don't think he plays this week. No. And in a situation where the Texans are going to be down a lot in this game, as Vegas thinks they will be, I think this can play into a back-end PPR floor game for David Johnson, and he always has the upside to score a touchdown. And I think this game has the potential to shoot out in is it in Houston or is it in Baltimore?
I believe
Baltimore, right?
I believe it's let me make sure here. Really quick. I should know this off the top of my head. It's in Houston.
Yeah, it's in Houston. So I definitely feel like David Johnson is going to be a decent start this week. I wouldn't play him. I wouldn't be rushing to play him in daily fantasy, but for your season-long teams, if David Johnson, you don't feel too confident about his performance week 1, or you felt like he overachieved week 1, I would definitely start him week 2 as well.
So I'm going to pull up fantasy rankings, kind of where you think that you would play David Johnson compared to the field. How about Todd Gurley? They're at Dallas this week. The Atlanta Falcons are. David Johnson or Todd Gurley?
Give me a second. Let me pull up my rankings for this week. But off the top of my head, I would probably where do I have DJ ranked? I would probably say slightly Todd Gurley, a little bit ahead of David Johnson.
Dallas is a bit better of a matchup there. A little lower. How about David Johnson versus Kareem Hunt? We'll say Kareem Hunt for Cleveland, Thursday night game going up against the Bengals.
David Johnson.
All right. Well, I mean, that's decent confidence there. Let's move on. LQ, I just brought his name up. Kareem Hunt.
Full send. My man's looking like he's the RB1, and Chubb is back to, being the handcuff that I was whispering in April. But I feel like Kareem Hunt, he's getting on the red zone touches. Nick Chubb last year, we saw he was the worst goal line back out there, known to man. So it's kind of a no-brainer that, Cincy's defense isn't the best and the overall team isn't the best. So I think this is a good, little bounce back game for all the Browns owners out there who have the Kareem Hunts, Nick Chubbs, etc. But I think Kareem Hunt's going to have a big game.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier on the show, Geno Atkins is going to be out this week for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he's their interior defensive stud. So, that'll open things up for the running back one way or another. I like it. I like the pick. I don't necessarily think that he outtouches Chubb every week, but he may get the more valuable touches, which that's what matters for fantasy.
Point. We need them TDs.
Definitely. I'm gonna go with a rookie here, CeeDee Lamb for the Dallas Cowboys. Look, LQ brought it up earlier. The Atlanta Falcons. He didn't bring up that the Atlanta Falcons defense was terrible, but he should have. I saw a stat earlier. I can't remember who tweeted it, but Russell Wilson was the only quarterback in Week 1 to not throw into a tight window, a covered window. The Atlanta Falcons just can't cover on defense, and I think that's a perfect advantage for Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb to take advantage. Blake Jarwin out for the year with a torn ACL. That's just more targets to go around. I think CeeDee Lamb, who had 5 receptions in Week 1, was decently used. They trusted him on 4th down. For some reason, they went for it on 4th down instead of kicking a field goal, but that's neither here nor there. The fact is, the usage for Lamb was very interesting for how he is, how he's just a rookie, and he's kind of the third wide receiver in that offense. So I'm willing to throw him out there as a flex play in Week 2 against a poor Atlanta defense. Billy, let's move on to your wide receiver, kind of most confidence in.
I wouldn't say the most confident in, but if he's sitting on your bench, I would definitely start Mike Williams this week. 7 players saw at least 24% of their team targets, with the average depth of target being at least 13 yards in Week 1. And Mike Williams was a part of those 7 players, and which was very shocking, to be honest, because there was a lot of doubts about him even playing Week 1. And he went out there Week 1 and proved all the doubters wrong. And you know me, man, I'm not a big Mike Williams supporter, but in a situation this week, being down a lot against Kansas City, I can definitely see Mike Williams sneaking in another good game here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I in my matchup breakdown, the quick one that I hit on Twitter, I was like, I kind of ignored Mike Williams, but I said, the Chargers did nothing last week. Can they do something this week? We'll have to just see. I mean, if they're going to, if there's a week where they're going to have to do something, it's going to be this week. So fingers crossed. let's see them do it. I'm a big Tyrod Taylor fan, so I hope they can. But like I
Mike
said,
Williams scares the hell out of me, though, man.
he is very scary.
Catch the ball, dive for the ball, like come down with the ball. It's like reckless. It's like, dude, to break your.
It's like a rule that Mike Williams cannot catch the ball unless he is diving. Like he has to be at least 5 feet in the air in order to be able to catch the ball. And it's just funny. He makes great catches. He's a great player and he makes great catches. But when you're hurt, it makes it scary.
Like, I don't know if you're watching Hard Knocks, though, but when he got injured, when Tyrod overthrew him, it was just like, why would you dive for that? It's practice at half speed.
Yeah. I did not watch Hard Knocks this year, sadly.
I watched a couple episodes. I haven't watched the last 3 episodes I have not seen.
Well, he got hurt on there, and it was just like, why would you do that to yourself?
Reckless. It seems, I'm not going to say that he's Reckless Williams, but you are what you kind of make. LQ, you want to instill some confidence in this nice little running back right here.
Jonathan Taylor. Listen, he is going to have a big week, man. I mean, we spoke on Marlon Mack and his injuries. He's out of the way. It's his team now, his O-line. He's even getting some catches out of the backfield, which is very surprising to me. But you got Rivers there, so he's, like you said, going to dump it off to whoever is out there. It could have been Jonathan Stewart out there. He's going to so you know what I mean?
Oh, God.
Taylor, it's Taylor's team now, and we all kind of drafted him with the expectations, that Marlon Mack was going to be in the way. And I even said before that Jonathan Taylor gives me Derrick Henry vibes, where he's going to start off slow and then he's going to explode for you for the playoffs. That's exactly where it matters. He gets you to the dance, takes you to the prom, you take home the prom queen, and you get the trophy.
Beautiful. It's funny, though, because as I was pre-draft scouting Jonathan Taylor, I remember writing specifically in my notes, he reminds me of Derrick Henry in the sense of he gets stronger the more carries he gets.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's going to get a ton of carries with Marlon Mack being hurt. So,
one thing that I really liked about Jonathan Taylor week 1, my fault, I had to say this, was his targets week 1, because Wisconsin historically just doesn't like to target running backs. So people want to give him the cliche of saying that he isn't a pass catcher. But one of the best pass catchers of all time, James White, came from Wisconsin. And that just shows the fact that they just don't like to target their running backs. And I feel like in this system, we're talking about backstage about how Phillip Rivers likes to deep and dunk his targets. And I definitely see Jonathan Taylor being a top 10 running back this week.
Definitely. By the way, just another Wisconsin example. Melvin Gordon is a pretty good pass-catching running back and also didn't receive a ton of volume through the air at Wisconsin as well. So it's a good point to bring up. For my...
You're kind of like cutting out a little bit, Robbie.
Yeah, you're like frozen.
How about now? Do I sound good?
Yeah.
All right, cool. My next start of the week, my final start of the week, guy I have confidence in is going to be Ronald Jones, running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As much as this hurts Billy, I was going to say, this is something that hurts Billy to his core as a Keyshawn Vaughn truther. It seems like it hurts. God, what kind of party did I invite to this crew here?
One day, Rob. One day we're gonna get there with the Vaughn shares.
We will. I know we will. But look, Ronald Jones received a ton of opportunity last week. Bruce Arians was not lying when he said that Jones was going to be the guy. Fournette received a little bit of work. He had a role. He was the clear number 2 back, but the clear number 2 whereas Jones was the clear number one. They go up against Carolina this week. As I mentioned earlier, I'm fine with playing Scotty Miller this week because of the Carolina matchup, and Chris Godwin being out. I'm fine with playing Ronald Jones as an RB2 this week because Carolina, you are going to be able to run on them. Jones received a ton of opportunity. We just saw Josh Jacobs tear up Carolina last week for 95 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Jones has the upside of, Brady just wants to chuck it down to his running back. And Jones he's not a great pass catcher, but he can actually catch screen passes. If he can catch anything, it's going to be a screen pass. So, I have pretty strong confidence in Ronald Jones, and if I have him on my roster, I would definitely be playing him this week. And Billy, your final start of the week, I like this one a lot because he kind of went ignored on the waiver wire in most redraft leagues because of bigger, more exciting options.
Yeah, my start of the week at tight end this week is going to be Logan Thomas. He ran 31 routes, which was 6th most among tight ends last week, had 8 targets, 4 receptions, 37 yards and a touchdown, and he had the 3rd most air yards for tight ends in week 1. And then on top of that, he's a former quarterback, so you know that he's going to be pretty athletic playing the tight end position. And then even more, put the cherry on top, the Cardinals sucked at defending tight ends last year and led up the most yards after catch. So if Haskins and Thomas can connect a little bit on those air yards for this week, I think fantasy owners aren't savvy enough to get ahead of the curve that Logan Thomas is probably going to be a tight end 1 this year.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter betting that Logan Thomas would potentially be a tight end 1, like a low end, tight end 10
I think
type
he's
of
definitely
guy.
a low end tight end 1.
Is he the Mark Andrews of this year?
Potentially. I think a guy like Hayden Hurst is going to be the Mark Andrews of this year. Rob noted earlier about Hayden Hurst ran some of the. I think he ran the most.
He was first among
tight end routes. Yeah,
first among tight ends.
Russell
routes.
Gage, like you said, LQ, kind of overexceeded expectations in week 1. So I definitely feel like a guy like Hayden Hurst is going to be a Mark Andrews of this year because when he bounces back, it's going to bounce back hard. I doubt there's going to be a lot of weeks where you see Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, and Russell Gage all have 8+ targets.
Yeah, insane.
As far as Logan Thomas, LQ suggested he may be the Mark Andrews of this year. I'm going to have to go no on that one just because of his quarterback. I don't think there's any chance that Haskins can get Logan Thomas.
You're supposed to be the Haskins guy, though, Rob.
I am supposed to be the Haskins guy, and as the Haskins guy, I will say 7 is probably his max. So. Let's cool with that. Let's be chill there. I think the Washington football team can make the playoffs with Haskins as a game manager.
You're tripping.
I don't want to put a bet on it because I'm not that confident. But
the Giants have a better season than the Redskins. Than the Washington football team. It's gonna get used to. It's gonna be so hard to get used to saying the Washington football team.
But it's weird because as soon as we get used to saying Washington football team, next year they're going to change to whatever, Red Tails, Warriors, whatever, Senators.
Guaranteed. There's no time frame on it. They don't even know yet. So
that's true too. So
it might be the Washington team forever now.
Yeah, they potentially lost all their investors too. So
crazy.
Who knows what that team is doing?
I don't know because I think a defense can carry a team much easier than an offense can. Yes, Daniel Jones looked good. He looked a lot better than Dwayne Haskins did, but the difference between the Giants defense and the Washington defense.
I just feel like the Giants aren't that less of a talented team than the Redskins. The best thing about the Redskins would be their defensive line. Offensively, they're going to have problems all year scoring.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Not wrong at all. And as I mentioned earlier, LQ brought some busts with him to the table. So go off here, LQ. You got a Thursday night matchup here to highlight. First of all, at wide receiver.
Personal grudge. I hate this dude. He's burned me back years. Like I said, he was a guy that'll take you to the dance, but he's gonna leave you right at the door.
Oh.
And
He's talking about Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah,
for our audio listeners.
I cannot stand Odell Beckham. He is. I mean, he proved it. You know, he kind of shit the bed week 1, but I don't solely blame that on him because Baker's his quarterback. But I feel like I think I don't know if you guys saw the report. Like, they can't force him the ball. I think that's what Baker was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And you understand when you have that diva mentality and it's in the locker room, it's very cancerous.
Yeah.
Jarvis Landry's dealing with his hip injury right now, so Jarvis can't, make up for, 90 targets this year. I don't really see that happening. He's probably going to take a step back because that's a serious injury. But I feel like that offense is just going to be struggling week in and week out, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And I feel like when it comes to Odell Beckham, it's very personal because he's cost me championships, cost me money. So it's like that's the only reason why I got him on my bust list. It's not even based on the matchup. Like, I hate Thursday night games because they get weird. London games, I don't really pay attention to because they get weird too. But at the end of the day, Odell Beckham's like one of the guys that I'm not drafting. I'm not putting him in starting lineups. I don't even see him as a flex for Thursday night. But that's just me. That's just me.
I am an Odell Beckham owner in one redraft league. The upside of Odell Beckham is much greater than the upside of any other wide receiver that I can get off the waiver wire, or sort of any other guy that I would even consider playing over him. So I'm willing to kind of trust him, and the fact that he got 10 targets last week, now he's getting a much easier matchup. I don't have high expectations because one of the things I highlighted in my weekly breakdown, I'm not very excited for this matchup period because Joe Burrow, I think he needs a bit more experience behind center, and I just don't see a lot to like about Baker. So I just think this could be another underwhelming short week where the Thursday night game, 17-10 could be the final, and at that point, it's just a boring game. Let's move on. Another bust that you brought to the table here, tight end for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Rob Gronkowski. Interesting based on the matchup, but maybe we hit it a bit earlier when Trey commented and said that the Bucs were heavily using all 3 tight ends, O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate, involved last week.
And Bruce Arians hates tight ends, but that's another. But I feel like Rob this week, he's a bust. I mean, we've seen that he's not really in football shape, just to be honest. When you have an O.J. Howard, I'm an O.J. Howard believer. This is my last year giving him a chance. Not saying I have any shares of him because I don't. I'm just hoping that he can be something this year. Hopefully, Cameron Brate can be something because I'm a Cameron Brate fan also. Winston loved Brate. That's the only time I found Brate to be relevant ever. You know what I mean? But hopefully they keep this cycle of, the 3, tight ends, and maybe they're doing the hot hand who ends up popping off, but I don't think it'll be Gronk, these first couple of weeks. Maybe we'll start seeing Brady and Gronk and it'll become something beautiful that we've seen before in New England, but right now you got to pump the brakes.
Definitely feel that. People love the name. That's why he was drafted as high as he was drafted in redraft leagues. But I'm not. Bill, you mentioned earlier that you are partially in on Rob Gronkowski this offseason. What did you kind of think of how week 1 went down?
One of my friends told me O.J. Howard's going to be the guy to own for the tight end situation for the Bucs, and he's definitely was not wrong. So, Commissioner Rack, if you're listening out there, great call on that. I'm on the bandwagon as well.
Yeah, I could buy that. Moving on here, bust for LQ. wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins, Preston Williams, and this is
Yeah.
another one that kind of may go hand in hand with what we mentioned earlier with Devontae Parker and his injury.
Yeah, and I feel like Fitzpatrick, he has to get it together. I didn't like what I saw against New England, even though that was a bad matchup to begin with. He just didn't look comfortable. It might be Tua time soon, not too soon, hopefully, where he can get some time to develop. But overall, like, I'm not too happy with Fitzpatrick magic or whatever right now. And it's kind of hurting guys like Preston Williams and, Devontae Parker with his injury, et cetera. So it's going to be a slow start before we get to see, the Preston Williams that we saw the first 8 weeks before he, suffered that injury.
Right. I agree. He was still also kind of easing himself back into it last week.
Yeah.
Even though he played. And as you mentioned, we just did not see a good enough Ryan Fitzpatrick to have confidence in really any pass catcher in Miami. So, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Moving on, another running back. The first running back. This one also in the AFC East, though. Devin Singletary for the Buffalo Bills. Despite the good matchup this week against the formerly mentioned Dolphins, you're kind of against him.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Moss is going to have a big game. And I saw that when kept seeing Zach Moss on third down. I kept seeing Zach Moss in the red zone, getting, targets in the red zone to catch the ball. I think it was 2. I think Josh Allen thrown to him, and he dropped both of them. But it's still like you're targeting Zach Moss in the red zone. That's telling me something. It should be Singletary out there. It should be Singletary in the red zone, but it's not. You got this rookie Zach Moss that's taking the most important touches from him, and I kind of felt this way about Devin Singletary coming in right after the draft. We kind of saw his ceiling last season with Frank Gore being the annoying old man there, and it was kind of holding Singletary back. But now they got a top prospect, one of the top prospect running backs. We're seeing the kind of same role, but the role here is that Zach Moss is outperforming Devin Singletary.
Yeah, and Billy can kind of speak to this too, but Billy was a little higher on Zach Moss than I was pre-draft. I really did not like what I saw in film. Like, I just thought he was. I've called him this plenty of times, but Carlos Hyde 2.0 is what I saw, which was just not, kind of like a plotter out there. Not a lot to be excited about. I was really not in on Moss when he went to Buffalo. I thought it was okay for Singletary. I didn't think it was. Obviously, I thought he was just going to take the Frank Gore role, but which is kind of the role that he did take. But he's kind of biting off a little more than that, as you said, the receiving work. I believe Devin Singletary, talent-wise, is the better player, but I don't
think Buffalo believes that, though.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Yeah, and it is a problem. And I believe, like you said, Zach Moss is going to be the one to receive the more important touches, like receptions and inside the 5 carries.
Yeah.
And, like we said, at this point, I just kind of have to take the L on Zach Moss and say, oh, well, I missed out, I wasn't really in on Devin Singletary either because I thought it was just going to kind of be an annoying split. But, like you said, Zach Moss is the one getting the more important touches, and we kind of just got to accept that.
Yeah.
And then the final bust that you bring to the table, Pittsburgh Steelers running back Benny Snell, James Conner, kind of injured-ish. I didn't see it really. I didn't really see a play where it happened.
Me either, honestly. I don't know what happened. I was watching the game, but I feel like everybody ran the waivers. They got him. I don't think he's the guy to put in your starting lineup right now because it's still a question of James Conner comes back. That's the only reason why I think he's going to bust. Really, it's because of James Conner coming back. And then we're going to be looking at a weird situation where you got him in your starting lineup and he's not producing as much as we thought. Don't get me wrong. I loved what I saw. He's very explosive. He was like looking for contact. He was just looking like an all-around good running back. Mm-hmm. But we got to pump the brakes, right now until we figure out what's going on with James Conner.
Right. Billy, do you think James Conner plays this week? And if he does play this week, do you think? Because I've even seen this question where if James Conner plays this week, does that mean that he's the featured back again? Because Benny Snell just looked better.
Yeah.
Me personally, I feel like if James Conner is out, I'm probably gonna end up playing a lot of Benny Snell in daily fantasy. But that's only because I just don't. I was never really a big James Conner truther to begin with.
Yeah. There was one league I drafted James Conner in, and it was a little early. It was the 3rd round. It was just kind of like, to me, like if James Conner was healthy, every time we've seen James Conner healthy before, he's been a pretty solid fantasy back. Like obviously the question is health, but I was kind of in that position where after James Conner, it was who else, and. So I kind of felt like I reached on him a little early, and I didn't necessarily feel comfortable with the pick. And obviously, now I'm taking the punishment from that. But I agree. Like if Benny Snell, or I'm sorry, if James Conner is active, I'm not playing Benny Snell because I'm not just gonna trust that he's going to be the guy. There's no reason to kind of believe that. So.
Too early.
Yeah, definitely. You would have to see how it works out. They're going up against Denver, who is kind of pretty. It's a rough matchup for sure, but they are dealing with some injuries. Obviously, Von Miller, Bradley Chubb's not 100%. AJ Bouye is hurt, but he's a corner, so that obviously affects the passing game more.
Yeah.
But regardless, obviously if Connor's out, Snell is a pretty decent play, but he's not an exciting play regardless to me, and he's definitely not someone I would be looking at to play if Connor is active.
Yeah.
So
you ran to the waiver wire to go get him. You obviously started off 0-1, so you rolled nice on him. Now you're about to be 0-2.
Yeah, it's a tough place to be.
Yeah.
But look, that's week 1. That's fantasy football, and looking ahead to week 2. Hopefully, we were here able to give you some great pointers for week 2 to kind of help you. There's been a lot going on, too many injuries. Please, NFL players, stop getting injured because I don't want to have to, talk about news for 45 minutes again next week because all of my favorite players for this season was getting hurt. It's a shame.
We thought COVID would take over, but it's just hamstrings and high ankles.
Yeah, definitely. And Achilles, RIP Marlon Mack.
True.
Yeah, it's just it's painful. All right, really quick, Billy, you and I last week, Survivor, Billy picked New England Patriots. They won, so he is 1-0. I picked the Indianapolis Colts because they were going against the Jaguars, and well, the Jaguars showed me right, and I am 0-1. So I am off to a bad start here. Is my turn this week to pick first. And I've really not considered too much about who to go with in this matchup. So I'm going to take a quick look. I kind of want to side already with Dallas because they're going up against Atlanta, and I just know that they're going to score.
Can I give you my pick then?
You can definitely give me your pick.
My pick this week is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Tampa Bay?
I doubt Tom Brady starts off the season 0-2.
Interesting. And they go up against Carolina. So that is, I believe it's in Tampa. Am I right?
No, it's in Carolina.
In Carolina. So that would be an interesting matchup to keep an eye on. But I definitely agree with you. Like, they lost last week, but it was a good Saints matchup. So I definitely can see that happening. I am going to officially side with the San Francisco 49ers. They go up against the New York Jets this week. I know they're missing wide receivers, but it's just cherry picking at this point. They suffered a bad week 1 loss and they're going up against a terrible offense. They have a great defense. Look, if the San Francisco 49ers lose to the New York Jets, I cannot describe how much pain I will be feeling. So I will be convinced that this Survivor series throughout the season between me and Bill is absolutely rigged.
LQ, who would you pick if you had to pick?
Out of your teams? Are you guys teams?
No, I'm just saying, just in general, Survivor team.
Yeah, like a team that has to win this week. Like you have to pick a team that's 100% guaranteed going to win.
I'll go with Detroit.
Detroit? They're playing Green Bay. That's actually an interesting one. They should have snuck out the win last week against Chicago, though.
Yeah, they definitely should have won. Shout out to Swift.
Yeah, feel so bad. Oh my God, dude. But here's the thing, though. I will say this. I feel like, and I don't want to be too early. Like, I'm gonna knock on wood. I'll do whatever jinxing method possible. But I feel like DeAndre Swift might be the answer at running back for Detroit. I hope. He looked good. Yeah. And he was open. He was wide open on that touchdown catch. Should have had it. Look, that's a rookie mistake right there.
Rookie mistake, but it might help him. Bring him some confidence.
Oh, I think it'll help him. Like, obviously, that hurts from a standpoint. Like, wow, I just cost my team the win in my first NFL game. Yeah. But at the same time, do you think he'll ever do that again? Like,
no.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's a catch he'll make 99 times out of 100. So,
yeah.
And he had a rushing touchdown before that too. Adrian Peterson dominated the work overall, but
he still got it, man.
It's crazy, He's a Hall of Famer, and he's one of the best we've seen in a long time. If I had to make a Mount Rushmore of running backs over the past 20 years, Marshall Faulk, LT, Adrian Peterson, Christian McCaffrey, and it would be arguably, you could argue that would be the Mount Rushmore of all running backs of all time. Yeah. You could make an argument. LQ, thanks so much for coming. We ran a little long today, so I hope you enjoyed the marathon.
Oh, yeah.
Loved having you on the show. Thanks so much for everything you brought. Love the insight you have. You want to shout out your Twitter, website, whatever you want to shout out? Help yourself.
Oh yeah, you can follow me at where is it? Right here, Real Deal Fantasy. Right there.
Yeah, there's
on all social media platforms. It's on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I got the website up now. It's realdealfantasyhq.com, where you can get the blogs, you get the rankings, you can get all my YouTube videos and links and everything there.
All right, sounds great, Billy. DFS videos. When should we expect them?
I'm probably gonna drop my DFS video tomorrow. Make sure you check out Pub Sports Radio on YouTube. Always have some betting stuff over there on the site. Those guys over there are the best in the business. And if you're trying to make some money this weekend, make sure you tune in Saturday. Covington Woodley card. It should be very interesting.
Sounds like it. I don't really watch UFC, but you could have fun with that. Meanwhile, me on Twitter at FantasyForceFB. Follow the show at Dynasty Force Pod. Check us out on YouTube, Dynasty Force Podcast. If you have any questions, thoughts, reviews, whatever you want to do, you want to talk to me directly, talk to Billy directly, email dynastyforcepod@gmail.com, or you can just plain hit us up on Twitter, DM us, Billy at Getting Bills, and me at FantasyForceFB. Thanks so much for spending this week 2, or pre-week 2, podcast with us here at the Dynasty Force Podcast, and we will be so excited to see you again next week to break down week 2, and then get ready for week 3. It's going to be a gauntlet over these next 16 weeks, but I'm here for it. Again, LQ, big shout out. Thank you so much for coming on. We loved having you. Big shout out to everyone listening and joining. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.